Thanks for joining us. I'm here with Craze. Where are you at on tank?
Currently I
Hmm.
am like Masters 1, Masters 2, but I peaked GM3.
Peak GM3. So how long have you been playing Overwatch? Just so we can get an idea of your
I've been playing since season 3 of Overwatch 1.
Overwatch one. Did you take any breaks in between there?
There's been a few, uh, at least maybe a few month-long breaks, but it's kind of been consistently playing on
Playing.
month-on
Yeah,
basis.
yeah. So what keeps you coming back to and playing Overwatch?
Probably there's just a lot of different play styles, and there's also just a lot of fun. You can like every game is different, although some games can be not as fun. There's quite a majority of games where you can just have fun and try. You don't have to try to have fun and win. You can just have fun. That's the whole point of the game.
I like it. It's just I think just the uniqueness of all the characters and stuff is really cool, and then the concept. I really like that.
Yeah, 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 as they keep adding on
Mhm.
more as
Yeah.
well.
You peaked out GM3. Do you think you could have reached a higher rank if you would have put more time and effort?
I feel like I don't really like to try too hard in comp. I like to just try and have fun. But
Mhm.
if I really were to like super try hard, I could probably get GM. I could probably get back to GM3 and maybe GM2. I don't know if I currently could get to GM1.
So, what tank heroes do you like to play? I mean, which ones are your go tos?
Um, Hog. I play a lot of Roadhog. Zarya. A lot of Ryan recently as well. Mm, Rissa as well. Junker Queen. And very little Sigma, but
Very little signal. So
sometimes.
you're pretty well versed in some tanks there. If you play a lot of those, because there's
A
only
little bit.
there's like 11 tanks. So I mean, you named quite a bit of them there. I play Arista, so that's all I got. There's different things that you need to be good at as being a tank. So what skills are necessary to be a good tank?
To be a good
So
tank, you kind of have to just know where your team is. Your mechanics are more important than your aim by a long shot. You need to protect your team. You need to protect the choke. You need to have map control, take space. There's so much like in-depth things that a tank needs to know
yeah,
compared to just DPS, shoot enemy team, pick a guy and win.
yeah. So what about like communication?
Yes, definitely. Tank is pretty much the backbone of the team.
Mm-hmm.
You are the person that they follow. If
Yep.
they don't follow you, there's a pretty good chance they're gonna die. But you need to be the person that is telling your team where to go, when you're gonna push, when you're gonna ult, when you have ult, and you need to ult track. You need to just control the flow of your fight with the enemy team.
Yeah. Yeah. So a tank is a lot more involved than just being out there taking shots. Which tank, in your opinion, since all of them have different abilities, which one you think would take the most skill to play?
Hardest tank to play right now would probably be Roadhog, not because he has a high skill ceiling, but because he's terrible. But the highest skill ceiling tank I'd probably say maybe Monkey, Wrecking Ball, Rhine or Diva. One of those four.
One of those four. So, like, say a person wants to, become a tank, and there's 11 of them. Which one would you recommend somebody wanting to start out on tank just to kind of learn the role and see if they like it and want to progress in that role? Which tank would you suggest?
Uh, I'd say Diva, because you kind of learn all the basic parts of a tank without being like able. You don't have to do everything that a super high skilled character or player would have to do, because you have boosters and you have thrusters and you have defense matrix, which can bail you out of really tough spots and which are good for new players. And defense mage or boost thrusters can get you in and out of team fights. They can help you reposition, help you know where your team is, get to your team, make sure your team kind of coordinates with you as well. There's a lot of though, that you kind of have to make sure you communicate well with at the same time.
That's interesting that, because I felt she would be harder just for me because of the dive part of it. But I didn't think about it that with all the abilities she has that, she's kind of a versatile tank where she's not only just dive though. What are the common mistakes that you see tanks make that could cause some problems in a match or just, maybe it's just a team fight?
So a common mistake is just overextending or just sitting in choke and eating damage. Your role isn't to just take damage and that's it. Your goal is to, control the fight. You don't want to just sit there being an all charge battery, beating the enemy team.
Would that
Go
be
ahead.
like being over aggressive or
Yeah.
and then the opposite of that? Does that happen as well, you think?
Being too passive?
Yes.
Yeah. Some tanks feel super scared and they play more like a support in the back line, and they really just need to be in the front, be the front line for their team, but not be so hyper aggressive that they can just go in and die and feed. You just need to find a right balance for each character.
That's some of the common things I see as support when the tank just kind of just blasts in there and goes 1v5 and then is done. So I can see that. There's only one tank now, so I think a lot rests on the tank's shoulders. A tank can make or break a match, and everybody has off games, and so sometimes you're going to get flamed. How should tanks handle being flamed?
Well, obviously the best choice is to just ignore it and keep moving on. Just keep understanding that you're learning. Like you're not gonna be like Super or Choi or someone super good right away. Everyone takes time to learn. I've put like thousands of hours into Overwatch, and I'm still not like at the peak, like players. Everyone's
Yeah.
still learning. Everyone's still trying to get better. You gotta just understand that some people don't understand that and think that they are the best and that you deserve to just be put down because you aren't up to their standards.
I like that take on that. If a lot more people would understand that. But do you think a lot of that might come with just where people want to blame somebody else for their bad play as well? I mean,
Exactly, yeah.
yeah, you
People
know,
with huge egos will try and blame someone else to make sure that they feel better about themselves because they don't want to say, oh, I did something wrong, or
mhm,
I could have done better, or I should try learning something new.
yeah.
When you're really the good player by trying to
Yeah.
do new things,
Uh,
learn,
uh,
and progress.
and I think if some people that, obviously maybe not in really high elos where you should be good as a tank, but in lower elos, go try to play tank for a minute and see all the stuff you're trying to deal with and learn. And maybe you won't be so hard on the person. What mentality do you feel that it takes to play the tank role?
Best mentality, in my opinion, is probably to just understand that team fights aren't going to go your way. Because when you control team fights, you try and control the flow. Sometimes they don't go the way you want. You got to understand that you can't win every single team fight. You can't control every single one. You can't control the flow every single time. You can't be the most aggressive. You can't be the most passive. You can't be in the middle all the time. You have to understand. You make mistakes. You got to keep trying, and you just got to go again.
So it's kind of like one of the trying to have a short term memory right there on those fights and be like, okay, that one didn't go well. Let's go get the next one. So
Yeah, exactly.
okay, I like that. So there's 11 tanks, and you what? No, you play like 5 of them. I think that's what
Five
you
or
listed
six.
out, or 6, right? 5 or 6 that you listed out. So how many tanks do you think realistically should somebody learn?
Um, I'd say probably the best would probably be 2 or 3.
2 or
Uh,
3?
and obviously as you start getting better and improve on those tanks, you can throw in another, throw in another. Just if you can keep improving on those characters, you don't need to have to play every single tank character. What you want to do is you want to choose 2 or 3, probably 3 characters that are good against certain things. Like Diva or Monkey for dive. You want to probably learn one of those. You could do Rhine, Junker Queen, maybe Zarya, kind of for rush, and then maybe one like kind of hybrid one like Wrecking Ball, Doomfist, or Roadhog, just to kind of understand each kind of because each tank has a certain different role,
Hmm.
but it's good to broaden your styles of play. Understand?
So what about like would you suggest like would they just like have like start off with getting really good at one and just play them until they're really good and then move on, or should you spread that across two or three at that time?
I'd say at least at first try to just master one, and by
One.
master I mean learn,
Hmm.
understand, and just play a little bit. Then once you get the hang of it a little bit, you understand the character, what you should do, then you throw in another, and then you keep going.
Yeah.
And then you start to master each one slowly.
I think that's a good way to go about it. That's with support. That's what I'm trying to do is get really decent at one. So I think that's good advice for anybody. So so how important is positioning on a tank?
Positioning for tank matters a lot because when you position yourself, you need to make sure you're in a good position because more than half the time, half the team's going to be behind you, like your supports or a DPS or both supports or maybe even all your team at once. If you position yourself in a bad spot, you overextend and you die, your team's left alone. Or you overextend, the enemy team rushes your backline, they all die, and then you die. You need to make sure you're constantly knowing where your team is, where you can go past a certain point, or limit yourself to a certain line to make sure you do not overextend in the middle of a fight, and just make sure you keep understanding where your team is, where the enemy team is, where you want to go, possibly where the enemy team is going to end up going, but that's kind of a later thing.
Yeah. So how difficult is it as tank to know where your team is at because you're always facing forward and everybody's behind you?
I'm gonna be honest, even it's hard for me sometimes even. Like you gotta you gotta hear. I mostly use hearing. I listen to who's behind me, where I can see bullets flying past me, and I'll be like, okay, McCree's to my left, or Anna's behind me, or maybe there's a Zen behind me as well. I kinda I listen to the sound more than I like.
Okay.
It's hard to turn around in the middle of a fight.
Yeah,
If
that's
you
why I
do
was
if you do end up
asking.
turning around, then it's good because it's good information.
Hmm.
But you're not able to do that all the time.
So what does good tank positioning look like?
I'd say not overextending again. That's just something you
Mhm.
never want to do. Key is just gotta you gotta be careful, but you gotta be aggressive at the same time. You can't just be sitting in the back shooting at the enemy team. You have to make plays. You have to at least do something other than sit there. But at the same time, you can't just go in, try to kill everyone, and die.
Oh,
Because
right.
it's not going to happen.
So how does the tank's positioning differs from the support and DPS roles?
Tanks need to take space. Supports are mostly going to be behind you, maybe on point, maybe high ground somewhere. You need to be like in front, taking space, backing up when you need to back up after you take space, just to generally keep the flow going in your way. DPS, sometimes they're behind you. Sometimes you got a Reaper or a Tracer, they're on the flank. Sometimes you got an Ashe, she's on high ground, a Soldier as well. But most of the time, you're going to be the front line constantly. And you're not going to be flanking, which is different than Overwatch 1 since there's now only one tank. If you flank now, there's a higher chance your team is going to get dived and die.
What's the most difficult part of tanking? I mean, there's it's a complex game, and there's a lot of different things that are going on during the game. But what is the most difficult part about tanking?
Knowing the position of your team is honestly the hardest part for me.
Understanding.
I know I say I listen behind me. Sometimes I take a glance or I'll see the bullets flying, but it's very hard to focus on what's in front of me and what's behind me at the same time, and it kind of gets convoluted sometimes, as well as kind of controlling fights. They don't always happen how you expect them to happen. Like you can have an ult, you say you're gonna use it, and then you fuck up and it's over.
It's over. It's like, oops, I didn't get it, or yeah. So, so, so there's each team there's one tank, two DPS, and two supports. And so, as a tank, you're creating space. Which role? Who should the tank be focusing on? The other tank, the DPS, the support, or is it situational? And how do you know when to focus on which one?
It's very situational. If you're in the front line and you're brawling with their tank, your job is to keep their tank busy at the same time as your DPS are trying to kill their DPS, which is kind of the basic fight starter. But as the fight progresses or something happens, you see something, you get an opportunity, you change targets. Like you see a half health Moira or something with no fade behind the tank a little bit to the left. You go kill the Moira. You may extend a little bit, but if you get the kill, then you know that it was worth it. But you need to communicate with your team, hey, I'm going on the Moira, support me. Or, I'm diving someone over here because they're alone. You just need to constantly make sure you know what's going on in a team fight. If you see someone alone, you need to understand that you have an opportunity, but you need to understand at the same time, is it a good opportunity to actually go try and kill them? I
So,
would say focus supports first, then DPS, then the tank.
then tank. Okay. So I think that's a good thing because they're squishier, easier to kill. And losing the support is very detrimental to a team, or losing both supports. It could go bad from there. I agree with that. That's very good points. So sometimes the back line, is getting dinged up by either another tank or some DPS from the other team. Do you feel that the tank's responsibility is to peel for their back line?
It really depends what tank you're playing. Mostly, yes. But sometimes you aren't able to. But in the general term, if your team is behind you and they're getting dove, you need to go help them. If they die, you're gonna die, pretty much. There's no reason you should just leave them to die behind you, because then you're just gonna die, and then you're gonna wonder why.
I've watched like some videos and they talk about like where in lower elos support has to play a certain way to really rank up. Like they need to be more aggressive, do more damage because their DPS really aren't that good. But as you get higher in elos, that type of play doesn't work as much, and so your role kind of changes a little bit more. Does that happen with tanks as well? I mean, is there a difference of priorities in a tank as they go up the ladder, or does it kind of maintain the same since they're really the only one?
I'd say the general basis stays the same. It's more of understanding at the lower ranks goes up as you go up to the higher ranks. So in the lower ranks, it's better to generally try and just get kills, not overextend, and just do the basics. As you get to higher, obviously, you need to do pretty much everything. You need to just control team fights flow, not die, not overextend, everything I mentioned. It's more of a general understanding than a certain play style.
Okay. So if a person wants to improve on tank, what are some ways that they could do that? I mean, what tools or trainers or is anything out there that they could use to get better?
I have always just said play more. You just need to play more. Practice, just practice in actual games gives you practice against actual players and with actual teammates compared to like aim trainers for DPS who just you aim better, you hit more shots, you kill more people. Tank, it's a lot different. You just need to keep playing, keep understanding, keep growing your understanding. Maybe watch videos. Um, Comp is, I see a lot of people playing quick play. Comp is also really good. Um, Mostly just because it's obviously more competitive. Maybe it'll help you understand more, better. It may be a little kind of iffy because some teammates may flame you, like we went over.
Right.
But you just got to understand that by playing more, you are getting better.
How important is VOD reviewing for a tank?
I never had the chance to do VOD reviewing when I was climbing, but I have been able to VOD review for others, and I can say that it is an amazing opportunity because as a tank, you are focusing on so many things at once in the moment that you maybe forget something, you don't see something. When you VOD review, you can go back, look at what you missed, see what you did wrong, and then apply it onwards to games in the future.
So you never VOD review, but would you recommend somebody that's trying to get better to try to do that, or at least have somebody
Yes.
else VOD review their stuff? Okay.
Yes, for sure.
Right. So as a tank, you have your role, DPS has their role. Everybody's expected to perform some type of a way, not just certain actions or anything, but you have expectations of your other players. What expectations do you have for what your support you have for supports?
Um, well, my answer would be very different in Overwatch 1, but
Mm.
Overwatch 2 supports have been changed dramatically to be pretty much the best role. Basically, I expect supports to be supports now, not healers. I want them to heal me when I need healing, provide utility, all this stuff. But nowadays, if you're if you're a support and you're not doing damage, you're not a support anymore. You're
Right,
just a healer.
just a healer, and you're not providing as much value to your team as you could be. So, what about DPS? I mean, what are your expectations for them as a tank?
Obviously, you want them to kill people. You need picks. You want early picks, staggers maybe. Just kills from DPS are their main goal. Damage, it's iffy. I would say damage doesn't matter that much, but it can be used as more of a general way to see if they're actually doing somewhat decent per time period.
Yeah. Does this ever happen like where you make space, but your DPS or your support doesn't move up and help you take the space and you lose it back?
I would expect them to at least give me backup or support,
Support. Yeah.
because tank, your main goal is to take the space and also give up the space when needed.
Okay.
But if you're just taking the space and your team isn't also pushing forward into the space that you're taking and then backing out when you're leaving, then you're kind of just by yourself alone and you
Okay.
have to give up all that space
Okay.
instead of slowly one by one.
In each match, or you're more likely going to run into a bad teammate or teammates. How do you deal with bad teammates?
You kind of just have to understand that when you join a quick play game, comp game, any game in general with other players on your team, there's controlled factors and then there's non-controlled factors. You are the controlled factor. Your teammates are the non-controlled factor.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot tell them exactly what to do. You cannot show them how to aim. You cannot aim for them. They are their own controlled factor, and you to them are their uncontrolled factor. You just kind of have to understand when you're in a game, you have to improve yourself, not yell at your teammates or be worried about them, because you can't control that.
Yeah. So you wouldn't recommend like telling them they're making mistakes during the game or wasting that time?
Oh, I'd definitely say like, because you can offer tips of improvement, but you can't make them follow that improvement.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think tips of improvement, but some people get just straight mean about it, and I
Yeah.
think and I don't think that becomes counterproductive at that point.
Mhm.
There's a 50 win before you go into comp, and if somebody's trying to get good at tank, they're coming up like that's their whole goal. Do you recommend them that should they say, all right, I'll just do quick play to learn stuff. Now I got my this tank down that I'm going. Should they go and start playing comp, or should they stay in quick play a little longer?
Uh, I'd say 50 wins is not enough to understand a character. If you play the same character the whole time for 50 wins, and let's say you win 50% of the time, so you played 100 matches,
Mm-hmm.
you 100 matches on one character is enough to get a basic understanding, but the problem is you're most likely not going to play the same
Yeah.
character every single match. So I'd say a little bit more quick play, maybe 100 wins and then go into comp. 50 just seems a little small
Yeah.
for new players.
I was wondering that because I didn't jump in, and I thought right after 50, I just didn't feel comfortable enough. There's three different roles. What role do you think could have the greatest impact on an outcome of a match?
Um, I'd say for right now, I'd say support, but it used to be either tank or DPS. But right now, supports are, if you have a good one that heals you and does damage and provides everything that, a support should provide along with that, you're most likely going to win. If you're like doing bad on tank and your supports are doing really well, they'll probably do more be more productive than you because they heal, they damage, they do everything good.
I could see, really any role can have a good impact, but that's a good take on it as far as looking at support, just because of a lot of the utility and just saving abilities that they have. A lot of people gripe about, and it's elo hell. Is that like a thing, or is there some other factor that comes in to elo hell?
It's kind of a thing, but more so not really. I'd say currently, right now, ranks are really janked up in general, but if you're doing good, you're carrying your team, you should climb out of your rank. That is the general basis. There are times when you get bad teams and stuff, but if you are doing good and are better than your rank, you should climb because you should be doing better than your enemies every single game, which means you should have a higher win percentage.
What do you think the hardest role to play in Overwatch 2?
I'd say tank, and it's also the least fun role.
Yeah. What's the least fun about it?
Well, you're kind of just playing tank is just playing to counter the other tank. Compared to 6v6 where you have a bunch of combinations, you can play what you want. In 5v5, if you go, let's say Roadhog, the enemy team just goes Orisa and you lose. Or they stay Orisa and you switch off Roadhog and go Zarya. The game, if you want to win, what you have to do is keep switching. That's literally your goal. Switch
Uh,
to counter every single time. And it's just so boring and it's just not fun.
Is that because they're hard counters and not like a soft counter to where they could do a little better? It's just like you're basically going to shut the other tank down.
There's a few hard counters, but some of them are soft counters to certain characters.
Okay. So, do you have like any other advice or knowledge that you want to add?
I feel like so going back to the 50 wins to play
Mm-hmm.
comp. There's a really big thing with newer players, not new players, but newer, is the fact they get comp scared or whatever it's called. They get afraid of competitive because they feel like either they don't want to see their rank go down, they don't want to get placed in a bad rank, they don't want to lose, they get afraid of comp. And I was like this when I was new. But there's another thing on top of that now, and that's the bad ranking system. People don't like to play comp because they don't understand the ranking system. Because you can go 5 and 4, and you can go down in rank, when you probably either should go up in rank a little bit or stay the same rank. But it's just, especially the fact that when you can say you play comp and you lose, or you go 2 and 6, what's the point of winning the last 3 games if all you're going to see is your rank go down because you already lost 6 games? So you just feel terrible, sad. You don't feel like playing comp. It's just, the ranking system is so terrible right now, and I don't think it helps new players want to play comp.
Yeah, I could see that. I was more afraid to play, and I guess, the beginning is I didn't want to make people angry because I knew I wasn't good enough.
Yeah.
But then now that I'm decent, I don't like to see my rank go down. And so I understand exactly what you're saying. So what should somebody like that do?
Nowadays you kind of just have to live each game one by one. You just got to not care about your cards, your record, or your placement, or your replacement, or whatever it's called.
Mm-hmm.
You just got to play each game. If you go 2 and 6, like I said, you just got to play. You just got to try and win. Try and just do your best. You can't get down about it. You just got to understand that the rank system is trash, and there's no point in, being super angry about it.
Do you think they'll ever fix it, or you think this is just going to be it?
They said that they were going to adjust it. I don't know when they're going to, but I hope they do soon. And I really think it would be beneficial to the game.
Yeah. I just add, this was because I played WoW a lot. In my experience with Blizzard fixing things or nerfing things, it was either over buffing, and then somehow it just needed like a minor tweak. Then they would bring back the character. They would nerf the character to where it wasn't even nice to play. So it just seems like that's something that still happens in this game. And I don't know. It just might be something that's really super difficult to do. So I don't know.
Yeah, they have a notoriously bad connection with players. So when they balance things based on kind of the general player base, which means that all the higher ranked players who really know how good a certain character is or how bad a certain character is, you go down to lower ranks, the same character could be balanced down there. But since the GM, Masters area is only 7% of all players, they have their voices are way less heard. So the balance just doesn't get as much credibility as it really should.
Yeah, that makes sense. Anything else that you'd like to add?
No, I think that's it.
That's it. All right. Well, I appreciate your time, and thanks for doing this with me. And I guess we'll see you on Friday for the group discussion. So that'd be awesome. So,
okay. Thank you.
All right, man. Thanks. Have a good night.
You too.